Hello everybody, this is Mika Seppälä. I am reporting from my office at the University of Helsinki. I would like to tell you about an exciting new technological solution that has the potential to electrify classrooms anywhere. Personal response clickers are small devices that allow students to answer quiz questions during a face-to-face class by pressing the clicker buttons to answer a multiple choice question. These clickers are very powerful in a classroom. Students are focused when they know that every now and then they will have to answer questions and that their answers get recorded. In order to be able to do this, the students must have advanced devices that can store student identification information, as well as allowing students to answer multiple choice questions. Not everybody has such a clicker, and the clickers do not support the entering of strings as answers. The WebALT group operating at the University of Helsinki has developed a solution in which students use their cellular telephones to answer questions by sending SMS messages. Practically all students have cellular telephones. SMS messages also support strings as answers and are hence superior to the current clickers. In this video, I will first discuss the effect that the real-time quizzes done by clickers have in a teaching situation. And I will then proceed to describe our technical solution. I will first take you to my Calculus 2 classroom at Florida State University. I will describe my methods of teaching of Calculus 2 last spring. There I was using clickers every week. The effect on my teaching was extraordinary, but the trouble in using clickers was almost prohibitive. For this reason, I was the only professor at my department to use clickers. This is also the reason why we developed a solution using SMS messaging with cellular telephones, superior to clickers. So now, let me take you to my classroom. Before I take you to my classroom, I would like to advertise the final GEM workshop. GEM is a thematic network supported by the European Commission. GEM is short for Joining Educational Mathematics. And the final workshop takes place in Aachen, Germany, August 19 of this year, 2009. At that workshop you will get hands-on experience of this TSARQ quiz system that allows us to perform real-time quizzes in classroom. I am also running the WebALT company. The WebALT company is a spin-off of a European project of the same name. The company offers MapleTA problem databases and MapleTA services. It offers mathematical Moodle and Moodle problem databases, and most importantly, it offers the telecommunicating students advanced response quizzes, that is TSARQ, real-time quizzes using SMS messaging and cellular telephones. The WebALT TSARQ system allows a completely new kind of assessment. Here is the dictionary definition for assessment. It's a noun that means the evaluation or estimation of the nature, quality or ability of someone or something. At schools and universities, assessment is currently done via examinations that may be completely separate from classes. Now we need to move from assessment of learning outcomes to assessment for learning. This is a completely new type of assessment, and it means that we embed assessment into instruction as an instrumental part of the learning process. And we do that by real-time quizzes. They are embedded in normal teaching instructor first explains a method or a result, and then shows examples, and finally asks quiz questions periodically. Now, these quiz questions may be asked, say, like every 10 or 15 minutes, and in this way the instructor knows whether the class has understood what he or she wanted to explain. Personal response system clickers are special devices allowing students to answer multiple choice questions. They use Bluetooth to connect to a computer in the classroom, and the results of students clicking clickers are stored in that computer in the classroom. Here you see my students answering a quiz question. The clickers are rather large devices, larger than cellular telephones, and students must have these clickers and they must carry them around with them when they come to class. These clickers enable assessment for learning. With clickers we can integrate assessment in the learning process, and that changes the dynamics of the classrooms. Students are much more focused than otherwise because they know that their answers get recorded and graded, and the instructor gets immediate feedback and can act accordingly. So if the class answers very badly to a question, the instructor should repeat the materials just discussed. Here in this picture you see my class answering a question about improper integrals. Students are focused. They have 2 minutes time to answer this question, and this question is based on what was just discussed. This particular question was that for which values of the parameter p the integral from 0 to 1 x to the power p dx converges, and the answer choices were for all values of p, only for p less than -1, only for p positive, only for p negative, only for p greater than -1, and then finally for no values of p. In this case, this integral from 0 to 1 x to the power p dx is one of the basic types of improper integrals, and it converges only if p is greater than -1. Students should know this because it was just discussed in the classroom. However, students must think about it, and they clearly have forgotten what the instructor, that is what I just told them a moment ago. And they are allowed to use their notes, and they can make computations to answer questions. So here you see some of my better students making computations, even though this question is of such a nature that the answer should be immediate. Here is a photograph of the display of the classroom computer. It shows how my students fared in this particular question. So for which values of p the integral from 0 to 1 x to the power p dx converges. The correct answer choice is number 5, and only less than 40% of students got it right, even though this was a matter just discussed. After the modest success with question 1, I discussed again the basic improper integrals, and the question 2 was then asked, and it was for which values of the parameter p the integral from 1 to the infinity x to the power p dx converges. This is also one of the basic types of improper integrals. The answer choices were the same as for question 1, and in this case we know that this integral converges only if p is less than -1. So number 2 is the correct answer. And now, after having discussed these basic types of improper integrals again, students fared much better. 90% got it right. So this is the display shown to the students after they have answered the question, and this blue color in the bar 2 that indicates the correct answer, and the green bars are incorrect answers. There were still some students answering incorrectly, but almost everybody had got it. After the very good success with question 2, students felt happy and confident. And then came question 3, for which values of p the integral from 0 to the infinity x to the power p dx converges. Now here the answer choices are the same as before. And now we know that the integral from 0 to the infinity x to the power p dx converges if and only if both integrals from 0 to 1 and from 1 to the infinity converges. So now we know by the previous question that integral from 1 to the infinity x to the power p dx converges only if p is less than -1. And by the first question we know that the integral from 0 to 1 x to the power p dx converges only if p is greater than -1. And this means that the integral from 0 to the infinity x to the power p dx converges only if both of these integrals above converge. And this means that p is both less than -1 and greater than -1. There are no such numbers. Therefore, the integral from 0 to the infinity x to the power p dx does not converge for any value of p. And here, therefore, the last answer choice is correct, number 6. And students were not able to make this conclusion. Only 15.5% got it now right. Even though it should be almost obvious, because questions 1 and 2 were preparation for this question 3. So the right answer was for no values of p, and almost nobody got it right. Here you see the concerned demeanor of my students when they realized that they had not understood this problem correctly. And this gave to me, the instructor, the opportunity to discuss these matters again. After all this repetition and quizzes, my students finally got a fairly good understanding of these basic types of improper integrals. And this thanks to these real-time quizzes. In an anonymous survey conducted among my students, over 76% of the students found that these real-time quizzes are useful. The quiz results had a high correlation with the examination results. The correlation coefficient was 0.8. This means that eventually it is possible to replace formal examinations by these real-time quizzes that can be conducted every time the class meets. And these quizzes have the important feature that they allow the instructor to adjust his or her teaching on the spot. So when the instructor sees that the class has not understood a topic, the instructor can repeat it or explain it differently. When using personal response clickers, there are post-processing issues. These personal response clickers are separate devices that the students must carry with them. And students often forget clickers, so they use loaner clickers, and that requires post-processing. And clickers are not always correctly registered, so the system does not always know to which student a certain clicker belongs to. And then it is pretty usual happening that batteries get drained. So clickers are being used only during some classes, and then students do not always check the battery status. And with a big class, it happens almost every time that batteries of some students have drained. So the student cannot respond to quizzes. And then finally, results need to be moved from the classroom computer to a server. The results are initially stored in the computer in the classroom. Clickers communicate with that computer using Bluetooth, and the results are stored in a proprietary database that needs to be moved from this computer to a server, and this moving this data is not always automatic. In this picture you see me post-processing real-time quiz results with a student who was uncertain whether her clicks were correctly registered. In this case they were. Almost every time after a real-time quiz, one or more students come and ask questions of this type. They are uncertain whether their clicks were registered because perhaps the battery was not strong enough, or they made some other mistake with their clickers. Then there are lots of students who use loaner clickers or clickers who are not correctly registered. And this means that the real-time quiz results have to be manually post-processed and these errors corrected. Almost every time this required about 2 hours of my time. And this is prohibitive. Instructors simply do not have time to put into this process so that they could get the clicks correctly recorded and entered in students' gradebooks. Mainly because of these prohibitively tedious post-processing issues, I started a project with the WebALT company, with which the company developed SMS services that enable students to answer surveys and quizzes by sending SMS messages to the WebALT server. The students' responses get automatically graded and grades entered in students' gradebooks. Also, all responses are stored. This means that no post-processing is anymore needed when students answer with cellular telephones rather than with clickers. There are also less technical problems because students are less likely to forget their cellular telephone than they are to forget their clicker at home. And these cellular telephones have the great advantage that they support also string answers. So, like in mathematics, students now may give a function as an answer, or the name of a president in history. So this WebALT SMS service replaces clickers by cell phones in classrooms, and using cell phones, students get far superior service and the instructor can ask more complicated questions. Next, I demonstrate WebALT TSARQ quiz in function. Here comes question number 1. Before being able to send this question number 1, I must first, however, invite students to join this quiz. So, on the Moodle page, I open this quiz and I press the button on the lower left corner saying Start TSARQ quiz. When I do that, the system sends SMS messages to students enrolled in this class. And students answer by sending a return SMS message to the system. And at first it shows that number of students connected is 0 because nobody has yet had time to answer. Then we have 2 students joined, and now suddenly 3 students joined, and this means that all of my students have now joined this quiz because I have only 3 students. Then I press the button Next to get to the next question, and the next question, that is the first question of this particular TSARQ quiz, is the following. Of the following menu, which is your favorite dish? And then there are 3 items. The first one is Catalan, and in English it's a tomato bread. The second one is a Finnish name, hernekeitto, it means pea soup. That's a Northern European dish. And the third one, penne alla diavola, is an Italian dish. So this is being displayed in class. And then students answer this question by sending an SMS message saying capital R for respond, space, and then the choice they take, 1, 2 or 3. And as students respond, the system shows the number of students responded. So now I have 2 out of 3 responded, now I have 3 out of 3 responded. I still have 17 seconds time left, but since everybody has responded, I can press the button End Time. And when I do that, then the system shows the distribution of students' answers graphically. When using these quizzes in actual teaching, then following a quiz question, I normally make some comments. So in this case, I remind first that the question was of the following, which is your favorite dish? And the first one was a tomato bread, second one hernekeitto, and the third one penne alla diavola. Now this first dish, pan amb tomàquet, literally bread with tomato, is a Catalan dish. And that consists of bread, optionally toasted, with tomato rubbed over and seasoned with olive oil and salt. And then the second choice, hernekeitto, is pea soup in English. This is a typical North European dish served traditionally at the Finnish and at the Swedish armies on Thursdays. At the Swedish army, they serve pea soup even on Tuesdays. Now, the third choice was penne alla diavola, a typical spicy Italian dish. Maybe my favorite, but I like also hernekeitto. Now, when everybody has responded a quiz question, I press Next to get to the next TSARQ quiz question. So here comes TSARQ quiz question number 2. And this question is, where does the final GEM workshop take place? In the beginning of this video, I already told to you where it takes place. And here the choices are Amsterdam, Aachen, Bremen, Helsinki, Barcelona. And now on this screenshot you see that already all my students have responded, and then I press End Time. I get to see the distribution of students' answers, and I see that only one student out of 3 got it right. It is in Aachen, and 2 out of 3 got it wrong. Since only one student out of 3 got this question right, I next remind the class that the final GEM workshop takes place in Aachen, in Germany, 19th of August of this year, 2009. This will be part of the activities of the International Conference on Web-Based Learning. This TSARQ quiz will be demonstrated there as well. Interesting event. Please join us in Aachen. The final TSARQ quiz question number 3 of this presentation has to do with what I discussed earlier regarding my students' attitude to real-time quizzes at Florida State University. So the question was, what percentage of Calculus 2 students at FSU liked real-time quizzes? And here the choices are over 66%, over 76%, or over 86%. And here in this particular screenshot, already one student out of 3 has responded. Here the correct answer is number 2, over 76%. In my teaching, after these real-time quiz questions, I comment these questions and expand on what has been discussed. So I remind first of all you that I have earlier marked that in an anonymous survey of my Calculus 2 students at FSU spring 2009, I asked them whether they agree or disagree with the statement quizzes have been useful. Little over 34% of students strongly agreed. Little over 42% of students agreed. 16% were neutral, 8% disagreed, and nobody disagreed strongly. So this means that over 76% of students found the real-time quizzes useful. Students were then also invited to express themselves freely and anonymously, and one student commented that the quizzes really helped. Explaining something and then asking us a question helped me learn. This is an anonymous comment. There were several comments of this type. TSARQ quiz, the system that allows one to perform real-time quizzes by using cellular telephones as response devices, was developed by WebALT Inc. And as students remarked, the quizzes really helped. So, how did you like TSARQ quiz? With my experience, I can say that this has enormous potential, because now we can bring assessment for learning real-time quizzes into every classroom where students have cellular telephones. They do not need to have expensive clickers anymore, and practically all students do have cellular telephones. I hope you come to Aachen and give me the opportunity to show this to you personally. Goodbye. Thank you for your attention.